Okay, I want to welcome everyone to our special January 21st, 2019 City Council meeting. The only item on the agenda is the ethics complaint, consideration of the ethics complaint against a civil service commissioner. At this time, I would ask our city attorney, if you would, sir, just to give a brief synopsis as to the reason we're calling this meeting tonight.
I'll be glad to, Mayor. I've had a lot of questions asked of me today, and I thought the public might be interested to know too. What we've got posted tonight is for the council to consider an ethics complaint against the Civil Service Commissioner, Cody Elliott. And so that the citizens understand, we have a code of ethics in Haltom City, which was adopted by ordinance by the council. It's required by the city charter, and the ordinance has very specific provisions in it as to how ethics complaints are heard by the council or the city manager, depending on who's complained against. Basically, in a nutshell, any person who believes that a violation of the ethics code has occurred may file a complaint. And if that complaint is against a city officer, then the city council is empowered and directed to look into the complaint and make a determination as to whether or not there has been a violation of the code of ethics. And then if the council finds that there has been a violation, it may investigate that, and it may impose disciplinary action against that individual. Another requirement is that the individual who's complained against needs to be given notice of the complaint. And so that's what's going to happen tonight. The council is going to make a determination about whether or not there's been a violation of the code of ethics, and we'll go over that during the proceedings tonight. The mayor and I have discussed that it's probably prudent. Again, I've received a number of questions from people today about the proceedings, and so what we plan to do is to go into an executive session where I'm going to give the council some legal advice on how the proceedings should be conducted. I don't think that will take very long. Then we'll come back out here and we'll hold the proceedings on the complaint itself. So anyway, those are the guidelines for what's going to happen tonight, and after we come out, we'll give the citizens some more information on how the proceedings are going to be conducted, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Wayne. And now, with that being said, we'll convene to executive session pursuant to 551.071 of the Texas Government Code at 6:03.
6:30.
Okay, we'll reconvene back into public forum at 6:30. At this time, I'll call on our city attorney, Mr. Wayne Olson. If you would, sir, just kind of give a general briefing on the parameters of this meeting tonight.
I'll give an overview on how the council is going to proceed tonight. Just as a reminder, this is a complaint under the city's ethics code, and the city council is required to make a determination as to whether or not there's been a violation of the ethics code, and if so, whether any disciplinary action should be taken. This is not a public hearing tonight. It's open because the commissioner has requested that it take place in an open session under the Open Meetings Act, and that's what we're doing tonight. What the council intends to do, the mayor is going to read the complaint that's been made so that everybody understands what the issue is. And then after that's done, the council wants to give the complainant an opportunity, if they've got anything to say, and wants to give Mr. Elliott an opportunity, obviously, to give his position on this. And the council may have questions of them or have issues they want to discuss further, but that's the way we're going to proceed tonight.
Thank you, Wayne. So at this time, I will read the complaint against Mr. Cody Elliott, Chairman of the Civil Service Commission. And this is dated December 16, 2018, addressed to me, David Averitt, Mayor of the City of Haltom City, from Chris Anderson, President of the Haltom City Firefighters Association, L3562, regarding Civil Service Commission Chairman violation of Haltom City's Municipal Code of Ethics. And it states, on Saturday, December 15, 2018, I was shown several screenshots of Haltom City Civil Service Chairman Cody Elliott's Facebook comments about the circumstances surrounding Lieutenant John Summers' appeal hearing. He states, the city has taken our intent of what we thought proper training should be and, in parentheses, IMO, has overloaded him with useless training to try to make him quit. This statement clearly establishes that Mr. Elliott has an anti-city sentiment and has the opinion that the city has ulterior motives for the appropriate training that has been assigned as a result of the Commission's mandate. He also states the Commission needs to reconvene to change the 3-month suspension with no pay down to 6 weeks. This is all very troubling in the fact that the Commission should be unbiased towards both the employee and the city, and that he feels he can go back at any time to change their ruling. Their decision should be final. His comments were intended to undermine fire administration and city management in the public eye, and this is completely unacceptable. Any current member of the Civil Service Commission should conduct themselves in a professional manner, refrain from publicly criticizing employees or city administrators, and not engage in political activity. It appears that Mr. Elliott cannot be impartial in matters concerning employees in the city during adversarial proceedings, considering his statements. I present to you that Mr. Elliott's actions are clearly in violation of the Haltom City personnel policies and procedures. Municipal Code of Ethics Ordinance O-2001-006-01, under Policy Number 1, public officials and employees be independent, impartial, and responsible to only the people of the city. Municipal Code of Ethics Standards of Conduct A-12, engage in any dishonest or criminal act or any other conduct prejudicial to the government of the city, or that reflects discredit upon the government of the city. We at the Haltom City Firefighters Association have lost faith and trust in Commissioner Elliott and request that Mr. Cody Elliott's position be forfeited. I also ask that any impending commission hearing be placed on hold until a new commission member is appointed and properly trained. Attached included screenshots of Mr. Elliott's Facebook posts. Again, this is from Chris Anderson. And now I'll read the Facebook posts that were included in the complaint. Yes, sir. Okay, after, I'm going to ask if Mr. Anderson is in the audience. If so, I'll give him the opportunity to come up and address this. After he speaks, then I'll certainly give you the opportunity as well. Mhm. So included in this is Stacy Corbin and Annette McCallahan's self. I'm sorry? McClanahan. I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. I apologize about that. It states, I'm going to ask directly on the Haltom City Firefighters page. And then Cody Elliott apparently responds, the city accused him of bullying and foul language. John admitted the foul language, but the city, according to our findings, failed to prove the bullying. And regarding the 3-month no pay, we were later told the maximum is 6 weeks no pay, and of this date, we have not reconvened to modify the 3 months down to 6 weeks. And then, Cody Elliott, you were addressing D.T. Jones. You said see above reply. And then Cody Elliott, too, apparently Stacy Corbin. That's partially correct. We found John was bullyish in his manner and therefore ordered leadership training. The city failed to show any history of John being punished for bullying, but rather put John into a firehouse to whip him into shape. The city has taken our intent of what we thought proper training should be and, again in parentheses, IMO, has overloaded him with useless training to try and make him quit. As a commission, we have to make a decision based on the information we're given. I try very hard not to become friendly with any of the fire and police officers in order to be fair in my decisions. But no matter how we decide, someone will be unhappy with our decisions. That's the end of the Facebook posts. With that being said, I'll ask if Mr. Chris Anderson, are you in the audience? Mr. Anderson, you've heard the complaint. Is there anything you would like to add to that? If so, would you please come up to the microphone? And the council may have some questions for you after. Just if you would just state your name, please.
You know, after seeing this, we really never before this had any reason to doubt the integrity of Mr. Elliott. But once we saw these comments, it raised some very valid concerns and questions for us. If we found out that Mr. Elliott never talked to the city manager or the fire chief about what training was issued to Mr. Summers. So one, how did he find out what training was given to Mr. Summers? What gave him the impression that the training was unnecessary? Why not speak to the city manager or the fire chief and find out if that training is appropriate before making comments on Facebook? Who's influencing him to say this? Why do they think they can reconvene and change their decision about the length of a suspension? And if they can, how come as the commissioner chairman, don't you already know that? We respect and appreciate the idea of the civil service. We may not always agree with their decisions, but we respect their decisions and we'll follow their decisions. Their rulings can change people's lives for better or worse, so it's important for us to preserve the integrity of the commission and their decisions and the appeals process. This includes ensuring the commissioners maintain at least the appearance of being impartial. Regardless of the intent behind Mr. Elliott's comments, the impression my members have is that he can no longer maintain impartiality or objectivity. His actions diminish the credibility of the commission and any future proceedings, and we stand by our recommendation for him to remove himself from that position.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Can you please hold on in case any of the council members have any questions for you? Does anyone on the council have any questions for Councilmember Nunn?
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, and thank you for being on our fire department and doing a great job for us and all that good stuff. And being a leader for the Haltom City Firemen's Association. I have a few questions, though. How long have you held this office of president?
A year.
1 year? Okay. And what is your job title with the fire department?
Lieutenant?
Okay. Do you live in Haltom City?
I do not.
Okay. Where do you live?
Hurst.
Okay. All right, and it was in your statement, you were shown some screenshots
Yes.
of this. Who showed you those?
Jason Steele.
Okay. And did you have help putting together all this information? It took a day to see the screenshot, put together the information, and file the complaint. Did you do this on your own, or did you have help?
I filed the complaint on my own and drafted the letter on my own.
On your own?
But I did speak with members of my executive board.
Okay, all right. And I guess another thing, and please bear with me because I've dealt with unions for a long, long time, and I consider your organization a union, and know how normally they work. Did you have a meeting? This all happened within a day. Did you have a meeting with your PAC members? Did you have like an organized meeting and decided to pursue this, or did you do this on your own?
No, I didn't have a meeting with the PAC members.
But yet you signed your name on your letterhead representing them as the PAC.
Not the PAC, the association.
It's a fire association.
Oh, Fire Association.
Two different things.
Okay. So you didn't have a meeting at all with anybody?
I met with
alone?
members of my executive board.
Okay. And how many members are there on that?
We've got 7.
Okay.
I met with 4 of them.
And they're all elected by the association? Yes. Okay. So in all my experiences with the union itself always backs their employees. I can't understand if you're backing your union employees or the city, because it appears that Mr. Elliott, along with the other commissioners, did a favorable thing for one of the firemen, and yet there seems to be an issue with what he had.
It's not about their decision with the firemen, really, and it's not even the comments itself. It's that he's presenting the appearance that he's impartial now, and we've got to protect this process and ensure that they can maintain an unbiased opinion.
Okay, that's all I have for right this minute.
Thank you, Ms. Nunn. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Of course, a couple questions, and you answered for Mrs. Nunn. You're a citizen of Hurst. I never didn't understand, did y'all vote to bring this ethics complaint? Was there a vote?
No, there wasn't a vote.
So you made this decision on your own?
I did.
Okay. And again, Mrs. Nunn, I mean, good gosh, you received this on the 15th, and you filed the complaint on the 16th, pretty quick. Did you do research to try to find the truthfulness of these Facebook posts?
No, that's why I filed the complaint.
Okay.
It's
Next
my
thing.
understanding that y'all can investigate it.
Okay. Were you on duty on the 15th and 16th?
I believe I was, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Are there any other questions or comments from the council for Mr. Anderson? Seeing none? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I would like... Oh, yes, sir, Mr. Weiss. I'm sorry, I didn't see your light on. You have a question for Mr. Anderson?
What are your duty hours? What hours are you working on duty? Are you 48 on?
Yes, 48 on 96 off.
Thank you. I couldn't remember.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Elliott. If you would, sir, just state your name for the record.
I'm sorry.
When you come up to the microphone, if you would just...
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, we were off that day.
You were off that day? Okay, Mr. Anderson states he was off that day. If you would just state your name for the record, and you've heard the complaint.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Cody Elliott, 59 years old. I've lived in Haltom City my entire life. My father was a policeman here in the 60s. He also served on a board in his later years. My mother was also heavily involved with the public library. My sister's on a board here, and I've been serving on boards here since 1995. My boys and their mother live here in the house in Haltom City. I live with my wife in our childhood home here in Haltom City. My business is in Haltom City, 41 years this June. My sister lives in Haltom City, and most of their business that they do is involved in Haltom City. So with that, I would like to just take this opportunity to address these accusations. And I may need to take a drink if I get a little dry, because I had to do the font a little bit large in order so I could see it without my glasses. I appreciate the opportunity to address these accusations made against me by Chris Anderson and the Haltom City Firefighters Association. His accusations are false and incorrect. Chris Anderson has used his platform with the Firefighters Association to attack Trey Fowler, John Summers, and now me. I stand behind all of my decisions as a Civil Service Commissioner, and I stand behind my comments as a citizen of Haltom City. Chris Anderson has accused me of several things, but formally two: that I'm anti-city and unable to be impartial, so let me address that. As a founding member of the Haltom City Crime Control and Prevention District, for those who are not familiar with it, it's the quarter-cent sales tax that we use for the police for things that they need. It benefits the police department in many different ways that tax money normally can't. I also served on that board until the city council took over the duties of that board. I was asked by the then sitting mayor if I wanted to serve on the Civil Service Commission, and have done so honorably for over 10 years. I have made decisions as a commissioner that upheld the findings by the city, and I have made decisions that have upheld the appeal by the employees. I made those decisions based on evidence given to me and not personal feelings for the city or the employee. I have dedicated numerous hours and many days, sometimes missing work, at my business to serve the citizens and employees of Haltom City, many times at a financial cost to myself. Chris Anderson's accusations of me not being impartial and not being responsible to only the citizens of Haltom City is factually wrong and incorrect. It is only they that I serve. My comment on a private Facebook page has been construed as an attempt to undermine the city's government. This is another false statement by Chris Anderson and the Firefighters Association. If my intent was to undermine the city, I would have made many more postings and comments in many different forms, but I made one comment on a friend's private page in response to an inquiry about what was happening to Lieutenant Summers. My comment about my belief that the city is trying to force Lieutenant Summers to quit is based on the actions of the city I have personally witnessed and with conversations I have had with John Summers 3.5 months after the hearing ended August 30th, 2018. If you wish to know more about how the city has treated Lieutenant Summers, I suggest you have a meeting with him and he can tell you. Chris Anderson then accuses me of overstepping my authority as the Civil Service Chairman by reducing Lieutenant Summers' no pay penalty of 3 months to 6 weeks. In a conversation at my office with Tony Beckett, she informed me that the charter only allows 6 weeks maximum suspension without pay or 240 hours. As of today, a meeting to modify this mistake has not been scheduled. When I said that I do not believe that the city has followed the Commission's intent in our rulings, I stand behind that statement 100%. Our intent was that Haltom City could not afford to lose a 22-year veteran firefighter, and that he was and could still be an asset to our fire department and the citizens of Haltom City, provided he had the proper retraining and leadership skills. It was the intent of the Commission for then Chief Bynum to administer those courses and place Lieutenant Summers back to work as a working lieutenant in a fire squad. It has been 4.5 months, and Lieutenant Summers is still taking courses, some of which he has voluntarily taken but not required. John has informed me that the city manager gave him books to read and tests to take as well. Nowhere in the Commission's ruling did we recommend that the city manager be involved as part of Lieutenant Summers' retraining effort. That task was given to Chief Bynum. And in closing, I would like to say to my fellow citizens that this has gone on far too long and spiraled out of control. It has cost the citizens of Haltom City tens of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money and salaries and expenses, and it should have never reached the point to where it is at today. I do not believe the Civil Service Commission has been given the authority to enforce its rulings. Only the City Council has that authority. I call upon you, the City Council, regardless of how you feel about me or the decision that you make about me remaining on the commission, to put an end to this fiasco and put Lieutenant John Summers back to work as the commission ruled back on August 30th, 2018. I would be glad to entertain any questions the council may have regarding the accusations against me or the commission's ruling.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Are there any questions? Okay, Councilmember Grove.
Mr. Elliott, you answered some of my questions, but you went really fast and I couldn't write them down.
Okay.
So, okay. So, so you say Tony Beckett was the person that told you that the
Tony Beckett, I believe from recall, like I said, I believe she came up to have me sign some of the papers sometime afterwards, and she said she was informed that the charter only allows for 6 weeks maximum no pay.
Okay.
We also looked it up ourselves, and that actually comes to 240 hours, which, depending on how the person works, breaks down to 6 weeks.
Okay. That comes under Article 11, Section 11.26. The department head may suspend any sworn employee under his jurisdiction or supervision for disciplinary purposes not to exceed 240 hours. The department head shall provide to the employee and file with the commission by delivery to the director, Tony, a written statement of action within 5 business days. So that's their appeal. So that's a department head. So there's nothing in here that talks about the commission there's nothing in the talks about the commission. Now they can modify. So, and I'm not going to get into the hearing because that's not what this is about. It's about the post. But in the indefinite suspension, it goes that the board is able to review the indefinite suspension of an employee, and they present their case. Both the city and the employee present their cases, and the commission hears that case. And in the decision, you may uphold, modify, or reverse the decision of the department head. So that's what that is. So I don't see where the 240 hours. So I just want to make sure that you say that Tony Beckett was the person that.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll talk to Ms. Beckett about that one. Okay, how is the commission supposed to rehear Lieutenant Summers' case?
That would normally be something that I believe would be under Ms. Beckett's authority to post a hearing. It has to be posted so many days or hours in advance, and we would have to reconvene to modify this.
Well, according to the charter, Article 11, Section 11.33, appeal to the district court. So that would be for the employee. If he did not like the decision of the commission, they can go to the court and file within 10 days, if I see it right. So 10 days. So if they don't like the decision, then they can go appeal. There's no provisions in the charter for an employee to go and have an appeal to the appellate body.
Again, that may be completely true, but being a just regular citizen, I have to rely on the help and guidance from people of the city. During our hearings, we also have an attorney that helps us.
Yep.
Because we are not knowledgeable in many of those factors,
Yep.
so we rely on
and,
help.
and I read, or actually I listened to the entire hearing, and I heard you make that statement at the very end. But you said you were on the board for 10 years,
10 years.
and you haven't looked at the Article 11?
No,
This is your
it was
governing
one of those
document.
things that we've gone through, we've read it. We had an attorney for the city on our side come through us, kind of just walk through the different things that we're allowed to do, kind of the guidelines for stuff. But again, it's one of those things to where it gets into just the area that we have to rely on guidance from.
Okay. Now, on
the legality part, we have to have we need the guidance legality-wise on that part. You know, we have to make our decision based on the information and how we think about it.
Yep.
But we're guided by them legally about what can be done or what.
Yeah, well, I heard a lot of I object or you know, and because the commission doesn't follow a traditional court
Correct.
laws of evidence and things like that. So,
It can become a little overwhelming.
oh, it was very entertaining. How do you know? And you answered this. You said Lieutenant Summers came to you and told you about his training.
Yes.
And so
My
why did?
sister has known Lieutenant Summers for some time.
Yeah.
The first time I think that I met Lieutenant Summers was probably after a hearing we had at the library over a lieutenant who'd been passed over, and he was in the parking lot. But again, I've always tried to maintain. When I first came onto it, there was a man that had been on the commission that loved to go to the firemen's lunches and all the things, become buddies with them. And I was told that it was recommended to not become friendly with people because one day you may have to make a decision. So again, I've always kind of distanced myself from everyone so that I wouldn't have to base something I decided on someone that I liked or didn't like. So I've tried to keep that neutral.
Okay, my concern is because you are the chairman of the commission and you have an employee coming to you.
3.5 months after.
Okay, it doesn't matter. You're still the commission. So tomorrow,
Well,
something.
no, he didn't actually come to me. He came up and visited my sister,
Okay.
and I decided to ask him about what was, how he was progressing.
Okay.
And again, let me tell you something on that hearing with the lieutenant that's passed over. When he was.
I'm not really worried about.
Okay.
I'm
let me
worried
just-
about.
Let's
I'm
just
worried.
stick to, well, let me
Yeah.
finish if you would, please.
Sure.
Give me that leverage. I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yep.
And I spent 3 days without pay on my work for that.
Yep.
Give me a little leverage.
Okay.
So here's the deal. He comes out. He was passed over. He had higher score on his test. He was passed over.
Yep.
The reason was upheld by the city, by us. When I saw him in the parking lot, I said, look, I just want you to know that we see you going the right direction. Don't give up. Keep going that way because you're doing the right thing. And again, when he was up there, I said, how are you going on your training? I want to know. I don't want to just make a ruling or find out and that's the end of it. I want to know. I live here my whole life. It makes
Okay.
a difference to me.
And that's fine. Okay, my concern is this. You posted this onto. It doesn't matter if it's a private Facebook message. It's because there's no such thing as private in the internet world.
Well, you know, they've also got a thing called the First Amendment.
Well, okay, that's a good question. Okay, as an individual that signs up for things, we give up
My
certain.
comment was made as an individual.
Okay, but no.
Are you going somewhere with this, or are you just
No, I'm
like
just
to
trying to-
admonish me?
no,
ask me a
I'm just-
question,
I am
or
asking
would you just like to tell
Okay.
me I did wrong?
Okay.
All right.
Maintain your decorum
Okay.
here.
No, I'm being
We
attacked.
will maintain
No,
decorum
you're not
here.
being attacked. I'm just
We'll both
asking a
maintain
question.
decorum here.
I'm just asking a question. Okay, so I don't understand why you're upset. I just found out you and I were probably on the same board that put in the crime control district tax, because I was the police officer on representing the police officers association at that point in time for that committee. So I'm going through my mind trying, because I remember Oscar and Mr. Haltom on that board, and I just can't place you. So I'm doing memory Rolodex on it.
Maybe I can answer this for you. I'm vocal, I'm opinionated, and when I believe in something is wrong, I will call it out. I will not
Okay.
be quiet about it.
All right.
And no matter what you decide tonight, that's fine with me either way.
Okay.
I just wanted my chance to come up here and state my opinion and state what I believe and why I did what I did. So whatever you choose is fine by me.
Okay, but I'm just trying to find out. Okay, so in your statement, you said Lieutenant Summers talked to you 3 months after the fact. Okay, so, and then the other, how is Lieutenant Summers overloaded with the training?
Our intent, there was 3 people, 3 commissioners in that room, 1 attorney. We kind of went over what our intent was. We were thinking 2 or 3 courses. Leadership courses.
Yes.
Our intent was that he stays a lieutenant, he's put back on a fire squad. It's 4.5 months. He's sitting in an office, he's still doing training and tests and other stuff, and he's at an 8 to 5 job. That was not anything in the intent of the commission's ruling.
Okay, well, I don't know how it was written. I heard it.
Well, and again, that's my mistake. We should have been more specific on it, but we kind of expected the city to follow the rules and play fair. So exactly where I screwed up, I should have written it down word for word what we wanted the city to do.
Okay. So I'm just, like I said, I went through this, and so, and then the appeal hearing. And so why do you think the city's trying to make him quit?
Well, why they want him to quit, I don't have a clue. But I can see what they did through the hearing, what they brought up, what they accused him of, and it was very obvious they don't want him there. And again, it's one of those things where, you know, if you prove there's a problem, we're going to vote with the city on it at all. If you can't prove there's a problem and you're accusing someone that's not true, I'm going to also judge against you on that, rule against it. And it's one of those things, like I say, I'm very opinionated. I believe in my opinion. I believe if I see something wrong, I'm going to say it.
Okay, but you did sustain one charge and dismiss the second charge, or the first charge you dismissed and sustained the second charge.
Correct.
Okay. No more questions. Thank you, sir.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Are there any other questions? Councilmember Nunn.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, Mr. Elliott, thank you for your service to this community.
You're welcome.
Sounds like you've done a wonderful job, and volunteer, we love volunteers, and it's hard to get really good ones. So thank you. So you've been a volunteer since, tell me again, I wrote it down, 10 years though on the civil service, correct?
Sorry, say again?
10 years on the civil service?
10 years plus.
Okay. During that time, about how many cases have you heard? Any idea?
You know, there's really only been two major cases. The first case was I was thrown into it, just straight into it, where an officer was fired. We found that the city was guilty of gross negligence and he was given his job back. Most of the cases we hear have to do with testing. You know, when there's questions on a fire test or a promotional test. We've had several cases that were going to come before us with problems that right as the meeting started, they asked if they could have a few minutes. They went out and talked and decided to to take back the appeal, to not have it. So really only two major cases. Most of it has just been questions, tests, and promotionals.
Okay. And have you been accused of ethics charges before?
Never.
Okay. Have you been reprimanded?
Never.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Nunn. Are there any other questions from the council for Mr. Elliott? I have one for you, sir.
All right.
In here, you talk about the training manual. Were you able to review the actual training Mr. Summers was asked to complete?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I'm not
Sure.
understanding what you're asking.
Okay, were you able to review the actual training that Mr. Summers was tasked with completing?
Yes, he actually showed me, I believe it's the papers from the city, the course's name and so forth on that. One of them, I believe, was a course he'd previously taken. He showed me the ones that Mr. Lane, the city manager, had given him some books and tests on. We discussed how he told me that one of the books didn't pertain or didn't correlate with the testing that was given. You know, we went through there, we were just kind of going over it and looking at the number of courses that was given. And I don't remember which one it was, you know, because it's one of those things that, like I say, I've got my own business to run and, you know, very involved in that, so it's time consuming. But it seemed like there was one of them that didn't even pertain to leadership training. I think it was another course. And like I say, you can talk to Mr. Summers if you choose, and he can fill you in on all that.
You know about when that was?
When I talked to him about it, the first time would have been probably about December, somewhere before December, right before that post.
Yeah. At any point prior to the commission's hearing in the case for John Summers, do you think your relationship with him would impact your decision?
There was no relationship.
Well, you said you knew him.
No,
Prior
I'd met
to
him
your-
one time. I'd met him one
Met him
time
one
in the
time.
parking lot.
Do you not think it's a little odd that he would come to you after?
No,
commission's
remember I told you
ruling?
that he's friends with my sister. My sister and I work together at the car lot.
Right, right. But you don't think it's odd that he would come to you, a commission member who voted to
No, I don't
reinstate
think
him?
it's odd at all. I'd welcome anybody to come to me if they've got a problem or a question.
I mean, I would think he'd follow his chain of command, assuming that I'm sure he probably
I mean,
did, but
after talking to
I
him-
think it would be a little odd that he would come to a commission member.
Well, he's also gone to Mr. Lane. He's also gone to then Chief Bynum, I think, and stuff. So, you know, maybe he's frustrated with not getting the proper treatment answers. So,
Okay. I mean, you're deflecting a lot. That's why I'm asking. You're deflecting a lot on our questioning. Councilmember Nunn.
Thank you. Something else came to mind. I know that you said that you had talked to Mr. Summers. After that hearing, I mean, I was there for 2.5 days myself and listened to the whole thing. But after that hearing, did anybody else come from the city to talk to you? Is that normal procedure? Nobody came to visit you afterwards?
nope, no one has ever come to visit me because I don't think we've ever had any kind of a case like this where the city didn't follow through with the commission's rulings.
Okay. I was under no, I thought I'd heard that.
I'm sorry.
I thought I'd heard that a couple other people had come. I may have misunderstood.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Nunn. Let's see, Councilmember Thompson.
Thank you. Mr. Elliott,
Yes, ma'am.
I am looking at the transcript from Commissioner Langford, and I'm going to read this part. He said that he moved that the Fire Chief Bynum and the city be ordered to put together a training program for appropriate leadership skills for the fire department. And he goes on, he says, for the fire department leaders, and that notify you, this commission, when you have done that and got that ready to go. And then Mr. Noga pointed out for clarification, he said, let me make this clear. You said management training for leadership program or anger management for leadership for the fire department. Did you mean for the chief was supposed to do for the department as a whole or just Mr. Summers? But anyway, because the department as a whole would be beyond the scope. I don't know if you remember this part of that or not. But anyway, Commissioner Langford made a modification. He said, well, then I'll modify that and have that made for Mr. Summers, and I'll have some more to say after this. But when he made his motion to reinstate John Summers, he said, I move that he be made whole his pay and time off that he was not paid minus 3 months. And then he goes into that about Chief Bynum and the city being ordered to put together the training. And of course, Ms. Ora seconded that, and the vote was all in favor, and everyone was affirmative on that. So I think that is why the city has been involved, because they were so instructed along with.
You're very possibly correct on that.
So, well, I'm just reading the transcript.
Correct.
So anyway, I just wanted to iterate that so that we be on the same page.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Dr. Trong.
How are you, sir?
Good.
Let I ask you, how many courses that the city or the fire department require Lieutenant Summer to take?
I'm sorry, could you?
How many courses?
How many courses?
Yes.
I believe that our intent, and of course I have to speak for myself because the way that we can't really debate as a commission like a jury can, but I believe that our intent was 2 to 3 courses.
Well, if Miss Summer come or approach you and complain about, say, city didn't treat me right, at least you ask them what did they do, right?
Correct.
And he said, well, ask me or force me to take 3, 4, 5 courses, something like that. If Mrs. John Summer never asked you or tell you about what the city ask them or force them to do it, right?
I'm not too sure if I understand your last question.
No, my question is, when Miss John Summer come to complain with you that the city unfairly treat him,
Correct.
is that correct? He never tell you why, right?
No, we
They-
discussed, we did. We discussed
About the courses.
how many courses that he was given.
How many courses did
Correct.
you know?
Yes, there was 7 on a sheet that he showed.
7.
7.
My next question is, how many courses Lieutenant John Summer finished or passed the test?
I'm saying,
How many courses?
do I think that we,
Among 7, that John Summer, Lieutenant John Summer, finished or passed?
I believe that he has finished either 5 or 6 of them from our discussion. I believe it's what he said.
You sure? Or you just guess?
Say it again?
You just guess, or you sure he passed
No,
5 courses?
it's, like I said, it was a casual discussion. It wasn't a sit-down anything. And I believe that he had told me that out of the 7, he had finished 5 or 6. I think there was possibly one of them that the book didn't correlate with the testing material.
Yes, sir. And have you ever approached the fire chief or the city manager complain about?
That's a good question to ask, and I have an answer for that. Partly and because at some point I have little faith in asking someone to correct a problem who's creating the problem. I also have a business to run. I spent 3 days without pay. The other 2 commissioners are retired. I'm not retired. I run a business that's my own. At some point, you have to just kind of quit getting involved with certain things because you just don't have the time.
My question is not try to pick on you or anyone. I appreciate you brought the prom here in front of the council, but my question is try to intend to ask you why don't you work together with the city staff, because right now I can tell you, you look around and this is true. Our city have been divided, and that's not very happy for the citizen of Haltom City.
Mr. Trong, let me tell you straight off.
Yes, sir.
I've lived in this city for a long time. I see how the city can treat people. I can see how they can do things to their benefit. You lose faith in some things and some leadership. And it gets to the point to where you just don't want to continue down that line. And, like I said, it's a voluntary position. It's a position that no matter what you decide, someone is unhappy with your decision.
Yes,
But
sir.
it's a place
agree.
that I want to
Yes, sir.
interject myself because I've wanted people to feel like they had the justice that they deserved if they were correct or if they were given too much punishment. But again, I've already spent 3 days on it, and then I've got to go and try to get meetings or hearings and other stuff. I don't have the time, sir. I've invested as enough time in this case as I can afford to do.
Well, at the chairman, and you told me you don't have enough time. I feel
Let me stop you right there because I'm sorry, but I actually was ready to resign before this case because 10 years, but I did not want to quit right at the beginning of a case that could be bad like that. I've never been a quitter, but you do get tired of the same thing time after time, but then you also feel like you've got an obligation to see things through.
But
This case has been extremely wearing on me. It's not just, I don't take it lightly.
yes,
It's
sir.
something that I take very seriously.
Only one thing I ask you and the commissioner or citizen, when you have problem, please work with us. The statement you make feel like our city council just against the citizen, right?
Actually, not the council.
And who?
When it comes to this case, it's going to boil down to the city management.
You're talking about Mr.
Yes,
Keelan,
sir.
right?
It's
Have you
gonna
worked
come
with
down-
him, sir?
Have I worked with
Have
him?
you worked with him, like come to say, Mr. Keelan, I want to sit down, talk to you, discuss about problem?
Again, that goes back to, I don't.
don't
feel
have
like
time.
I feel like it would fall on deaf ears. Whether I'm right, wrong, or incorrect, my belief was it would fall on deaf ears.
My philosophy at the council,
Say that-
if I have a problem with you, I will ask you, please go lunch with me or dinner or something, discuss the problem. That's the way how to solve problem. Not the way to try to get grouping together with somebody and try to attack one person.
Are you saying that I'm attacking one
Yeah,
person?
yeah, because you said
Okay.
you named Mr. Keelan.
So
That the one did not
you-
want
you
to
just
work
asked
with
me-
you.
Now, you've just now asked me this question, what I think. So I haven't said anything to anybody about my opinion on Mr. Lane to anyone.
Well, let I finish this. I'll thank you everything you brought here today. I learned a lot because I never heard this from before in my life when I live here. And this is maybe the first special meeting I attend. By the way, I wish even the council approve or not approve for investigation or something like this. I wish we have time, you, especially you, work with our city manager, try to solve the problem because our city very low on budget. And every time we have a meeting like this, you know how much they cost the citizen out there.
Mr. Crum, do you know how
wait a
much
minute,
this
I
case has
finish
cost
my
the city?
yeah. No, Haltom City doesn't matter. Somebody asking for the record, open record, costs us money, manpower. Doesn't mean
Let's
the
be
way I
clear.
said doesn't mean the
Let's be
city
clear,
is
Mr.
not
Crum,
allowed to
I have
do.
not asked for any open records, so I'd like for you.
No. I mean, from open record, from a meeting like this, costs the city money. But you know, right now, 2019, we run the budget in this city very tight. And I wish we don't have this meeting.
I wish we would have never had the hearing, honestly.
Yeah, if you don't have this hearing, my suggestion, you work with him, Mr. Keelan. If you can't solve the problem, we have mayor, right?
I
Or
can
you
work
at
with
least
anyone.
you call me.
I can work with
I can
anyone,
talk with them.
but again,
Yes, sir.
my time is limited. I have 2 days off from work. Half a day of that on Sunday is spent at my church. Another part of my other day off is spent serving that church. I have a family to take care of, and I put them over priority over anything. And like I said, at some point, when a situation has become like this, you feel like you just need to cut your losses and move on.
Every time I ask you a question and you doesn't want to answer my question, you say
I'd
you
be
don't
glad
have
to answer
time.
your question. Ask me a
Let I
question,
tell you
then
what.
answer it.
I have a job down at the DA office. I make good money. Why I quit the job? Because the law not allow the law enforcement officer to run city man. I have to quit the job because I feel like this is more important than anything else in my life because I'm getting old.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pay back in city. But I on way love to work together to solve problem before we bring everything in public and you not only hurt us, but most citizens out there get hurt too.
That's your opinion, sir, and you're
Yeah,
entitled
thank
to
you,
it.
sir. But that's all. But remember, I'm not attacking you, sir. Okay? I just ask you.
As
and
you
I-
have your opinion, I have mine.
Thank you, sir.
And if
I
we have to
appreciate it.
agree to disagree, that's okay with me.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Councilmember Gray?
Mr. Elliott,
Yes.
this is not a question about your decision because I wouldn't want to be on a civil service board because it's a lot of, you hear a lot of things that most people don't, I worked as a police officer here for 7 years, and I never wanted to be in front of the civil service board. And I told my colleagues when this whole matter was going before the board, or even before the board, I said, let the process take its course, let the civil service hear what the case was presented, and they'll make the decision. My issue that I have is just, you said you have freedom of speech, and everybody does, but whenever you take on certain responsibilities in government or a board or something, you have to adhere to certain things. And
That's fine, and
and that's fine. And there are consequences. So
that's fine.
for certain things. Okay, I'm just saying that I'm not questioning what your decision was. Your decision is your decision. I didn't hear the case. I didn't want to hear the case because as a council member, I have no bearing on what goes on. The org chart is the citizens, then the council, and then we hire the city manager, city secretary, and then the judge every 2 years. And so that's the level. Now, if people have problems, they come to us, and then we talk to the city manager and the department heads and see if we can get something solved. So if Mr. Summers is having some issues, he has mechanisms to address these things. And so and if I know you say you're a very busy guy, you have your business that you're running, and so I know he feels that he's falling on deaf ears. Did you advise him to contact the city council or somebody? Okay, so all right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Grow. Councilmember Thompson.
Mr. Elliott, forgive me. I meant to also emphasize we appreciate your service to our Civil Service Commission and to our city. I do have a question to ask you. In all this, when you were getting frustrated and you wanted to go back and reconvene for the 6 weeks, did you ever think to go back to Tony Beckett, who is the director, or contact Keith Lane, the city manager, or our city attorney? I mean,
It's a good question. I think that, it's one of those things, it's not my expertise about who handles and who does what. It was my assumption, correctly or incorrectly, that when Tony informed me of that there would be, at some point in time, a meeting set.
okay. And on this, with the training that he was to receive, even though it was not in the transcript or delivered,
I'm sorry, the what date?
I said, even though the 2 to 3 courses or whatever the commission was talking about in executive session, it never carried through to the actual meeting.
Correct. There was no other discussion other than our intent.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we left that up, to the city to play fairly and follow the intent. That's when I said, this has never come up before. In the
Right.
10 years that I've been doing it. So it's the first time that it's happened. It also leaves me with a little lack of knowledge of just exactly what I want to do, who to do it with, who to talk to. And again, at some point, you just kind of say, I've invested enough time in it. I can't
Sure.
just keep continuing.
But I guess my question really is, if that was truly what the commission wanted done, I would have asked someone, and I'm just saying, was there ever a thought to, since you had this with the 6 weeks, it seems
Yes, ma'am.
sensible.
And again, like I said, it's one of those things that I am very busy with a lot of different things. And the thought that I thought about, but honestly, I felt like that any issue I brought up would fall upon deaf ears. Whether that's correct or incorrect, that was my opinion and how I felt.
Well, I am sorry. I wish that I could change that for you. And I wish that anyone going forward, always when you work with employees, and I've worked 25 years in employment and handling HR, and I have heard and seen some of the best and some of the worst, just as if probably what you're hearing in civil service. Find it very difficult. And it is heart-wrenching, and it does take a toll on you. So I would just like to say to anyone that would ever work with civil service, it's always good to know that you need to communicate. And I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying as
Understandable.
a point going forward. The city has tools, and it's up to us when we serve on boards to take that step and make sure that we're utilizing all the things to help us do the right thing. Because, none of us are perfect, and I understand that.
Well, that's true. I've made many mistakes in my life. They're countless, but I've also done a lot of good, and the same for the
Right.
city. They've made many mistakes, and they've done countless good.
Right.
And sometimes both sides may not handle it as well as should be handled, but it is what it is,
Okay.
and it's where we're at. Like I said, my decision to retire or resign at that point, I felt guilty about quitting with what seemed to be a very important case coming up. I spent the 2 weeks before that very stressed, very stressful, having trouble sleeping at night. And I'm sitting there through the whole meeting thinking, boy, the city is going to be pissed at me. You know, that kind of stinks when you live in this city and you've dedicated 24 years to the city to think that they're going to be mad at you for this decision. Like I said, that's my opinion. That doesn't mean it's fact or anything else. That's what I personally believe.
Okay, I'm really sorry you feel that way, because I think we have to maintain some objectivity with this. And I just hope going forward that you or anyone else that serves on the commission will feel free to work with the city, to work with all the tools that we do have accessible to you. And I'm sorry that it just didn't work. I mean, you know, we all get overwhelmed with things. So.
Well, I just would like to say, though, that when I first came on, Gary Larson was the chairman. He was very knowledgeable, factual. He was great. He was a good person to aspire to do what he had done at that. Every year when we have elections, I've always asked, would someone like to be the chairman? But we usually have someone who's new to the board or just been on it that doesn't want to do it. And, you know, what am I going to do? Just say I refuse to be chairman? So again, it's one of those things that sometimes you step up and you have to take and do what you feel like is best. Whether it works out good for you or not, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Are there any other questions or comments from the council for Mr. Elliott? Well, seeing none, we'll now...
Can Thomas mention?
No, ma'am. This is not a public hearing.
All right, well, I'm just wondering because I was mentioned. So the post was actually directed at me, the comments were directed at me, and you guys mentioned my name.
Right.
So I don't feel like I was...
Only because it was part of the complaint, but it's not a public hearing, though.
Yeah.
With that being said, we'll now convene into executive session pursuant to 551.071 of the Texas Government Code at 7:26. Okay, we'll now convene back in open forum at 7:48. Mr. City Manager, during Mr. Elliott's addressing this council regarding the ethics complaint, he made mention to his conversation with our HR Director, Tony Beckett. Can you speak to that? 'Cause I understand you have some information regarding that.
Yes, sir. Mr. Elliott, I'm going to hand you this so you can take a look at it. This is the document that you signed on October 2nd of 2018 that Ms. Beckett had prepared for you. You remember that? I think this is I think that might have been why she was at your business, right? So the document that she prepared for you says 3-month suspension and reinstatement. And I know that you were saying you were kind of trying to go off memory, but she's a civil service director, and just to clarify that, she wouldn't have put on here 3-month suspension if you weren't able to do that as a commission.
Well, I guess I'm not too sure. Are you just saying?
You might go back
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
mic, sorry.
Are you saying that she didn't say that to me, that 6 weeks was the longest, or?
Right. I think probably what you heard or what she said to you was that the longest that the fire chief or department director can give is that suspension. But you, as you know, the charter gives you the right to modify it, and it just says modified. It doesn't limit you, in other words. So I was just trying to refresh your memory, and I think probably what she said that you took as what you could do was what
It's
the
very
department
long.
director
Like I
could
say, it was just a very casual conversation.
Right.
It wasn't a sit-down one-on-one meeting. It was just, from what I remember, just not word verbatim, but I was informed that 6 weeks is the most that the city charter allows for it, which we didn't discuss anything about reconvening. So it was just under my impression from that there would be another meeting where it would be reduced from 3 months to 6 weeks.
Right, but just to clarify,
Correct.
a 3-month suspension from the commission is completely appropriate. It's
Okay.
within the charter. You can do that. A couple of other things. Ms. Thompson read from the transcript. That was one of the things I was going to correct, is that the city, as well as the fire chief, was given the responsibility to prepare some leadership training. And you agree with that, right?
Yes, that.
Okay.
I'm not going to deny Mr.
Yeah.
Langford's statement at all.
Sure, and I just want to clarify that because before you said it was just the fire chief.
Right.
So I was kind of given direction, because in that employee matters, I'm the city according to the charter. Okay. So you made the motion to basically sustain charge 2 that the city had put forward.
I'm sorry, say that again?
So you were the commissioner that made the motion to sustain charge number 2 against John Summers. Do you recall that? I can read it to you.
You'd have to tell me what charge number 2 is.
Yeah, okay. Charge number 2 was, this is what charge number 2 contains. A violation of City of Haltom City personnel policies and procedures, discipline policy under conduct. 1, unbecoming conduct and conduct prejudicial to good order. 2, disturbance. 3, disorderly conduct. 5, abusive language. 6, failure to exercise courtesy. It was also a violation of the City of Haltom City Fire Rescue Standard Operating Guidelines, Section 102.01 Code of Ethics, under 4, 5, 12, and 14. 4 being conduct themselves in a manner that promotes good order inside the department. 5 being supervisors will lead in a supportive, considerate manner. Subordinates will follow in a respectful, positive, and cooperative manner. 12, treat everyone with respect and consideration. 14, conduct themselves to support the department's mission, vision, and value statement. Does that sound right?
That's probably, I would have to say it's correct.
Okay. So I'm going to read a couple other things from the transcript, just to clarify. This was Mayor Lanford's comments after both motions passed. He said, "I want it to be known publicly that it is with great trepidation, John, that we send you back to the fire department, because there is, I thought, a fairly substantial pattern of inappropriate conduct and leadership." Do you remember Mayor Lanford saying that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. "And John, I hope you take this opportunity to avoid the commission like the Black Plague and help yourself."
Correct.
And so then you said, "Chief Bynum, I want you to know that we all support the ideas that you and Chief Lane have for the city and the progress." You go on to say later in that statement, "And so we are in complete support." And so I just wanted you to know that all three of us are supporting you and Chief Lane on the direction you want to go, because we believe that. We know there's a transition period. And we just really felt that maybe John got a little bit left behind in the transition period.
That would be correct.
So you remember there was a lot of discussion about the organizational change that was taking place in the fire department.
Correct.
So I wasn't at the hearing where you made the motion. So what I did was I met with Mayor Lanford the next week. Just to clarify, he was the one that made the motion, so I wanted to clarify that we were on the same page, and he did that for me. He clarified what his expectations of leadership training and that type of thing. So I just wanted to make sure and correct the record that that's the direction that we were given. And you talked about creating a problem earlier, and I will tell you, when you return somebody to the organization with great trepidation, that also creates a problem for the organization. What do we do with this person? So I just wanted you to understand that and just be sure that I read you exactly what was said, maybe to help your memory out.
Well, like I said, it comes down to intent. And intent was, yes, we understand what your guidelines, what you wanted to do. But in my mind, the courses would be given out by Chief Bynum, being he was the fire chief and he knew what courses that he would need. So that's where I have to go with what I say my intent was.
Sure, I respect your intent, but what we have to go by is what the unanimous vote of the commission was. So that's where I got my direction as the city manager. As you guys said, you're going to help do this leadership training.
Well, again, I wish we could have been more, personally, I wish I would have been more clear, more specific about it. It was just one of those things that it's a case that we've never had to deal with quite like that, so it's all new territory. And so, sure, it could leave me room for corrections or doing things differently, and I got no problem with being called out upon that.
Right, and so just so you know kind of how that developed was the day after the hearing, I met personally with Chief Bynum. We sat down together. Chief Jacobs was the deputy chief at the time. He was involved in saying, okay, you hit the nail on the head. This is unprecedented in Haltom City. There's never been a case like this. So we're kind of like, hey, what are we going to do? So we met. We decided on appropriate leadership training. Again, I met with Mayor Lanford to confirm, yeah, is this what you want us to do? Yes, it's what I want you to do. I want you to be involved. So
you said you met with Mayor Lanford?
Yes.
You didn't meet with me, though.
No, sir, you didn't.
As the chairman, you did not meet with me.
No, sir, I met with Mayor Lanford to clarify his motion that he made. So.
Well.
And honestly, you made some very specific complimentary comments. You said part of what your opinion was is that he got caught up in a culture change, an organizational change. So the first two books I gave him to read were organizational change books, because that's what the commission said. This is what our opinion is of the problem. So there was a third book, but that hadn't been given back to him because he hadn't done the first two books yet. It's a leadership book, specific to leadership. So just if it sets your mind at ease that was the progress and that was the reasoning for the specific material that he was given.
Okay.
Okay.
Like I said, I feel like that I made a mistake and failed in being very specific about what and when, but I don't think anybody would agree that 4.5 months later was the intent of the commission for him to still be in a room taking courses.
But I think the commission wanted him to actually participate in the leadership training, correct?
We did.
Actually wanted him to do it.
Again, it's going to come down to miscommunication on my part or the commission's part or the city's part. What we were thinking was not maybe put into proper verbal words or what we wrote down. Again, it's all new territory, nothing that we've had to deal with before. So it's one of those things that I look back on it and I think about many things that I wish I would have done differently.
Right.
I wish I would have been very specific about what courses and when.
Okay, Mayor. Did I answer your question?
And thank you, Mr. Elliott. Councilmember Nunn.
Thank you. I just wanted to add just a little bit more to this, the commission findings, because it keeps being left out when we talk about it. I don't know if it's, but because it's been read a couple of times, there are some things that have been left out. So when Mr. Lanford said, I want to be known publicly that it is with great trepidation, John, that we send you back to the fire department, because there is, I thought, a fairly substantial pattern of inappropriate conduct and leadership. But I didn't think it was just with John Summers, okay? I think there was quite a bit of evidence in what we saw here that there are others in, and I'm talking about the leadership ranks of the fire department, that need to learn how to make appropriate corrections to people that are under them and to each other that are more useful. And then he goes on to say, I want to make it clear that you're on the right track and we support you. We just could not in good faith let John Summers take the fall for everybody. We just didn't think it was fair. So there are things that have been left out in some of these findings, and I could understand, and then I understand that the commission couldn't do training for the whole department. They could only do it for Mr. Summers. And so that, to me, that could be a little bit of confusion, you know, because it all happened within a short period of time for you guys. So I can kind of understand why you wouldn't be more specific on the amount of training. Just to kind of put it out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nunn. Are there any questions or comments from the council for either our city manager or Mr. Elliott? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Elliott.
I would like to say something that regardless of your decision tonight, I've enjoyed serving the city. I hold no ill will for no matter which way you choose to vote. I will not be vindictive in anything afterwards if you choose against. And because kind of, I tell people I got no dog in this fight. And which way it goes, I'm totally okay with it. I'm not upset over it, and I'm not going to be vindictive about it. So I just want to say that I've enjoyed serving all this time, and if it's the end of it, I'm perfectly okay with it.
Mr. Elliott, you've served since approximately September of 2007, so that's a long time. We certainly appreciate you for everything you've done.
1995.
Exactly. Before that, you were on one of the other boards. Yes, you served a long time.
24 years.
We certainly appreciate you and all your service to our
It's
community.
been my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Councilmember Weiss, did you have a question or a comment?
Well, two things. Social media training, I know we have that for our employees. Do we have anything like that for volunteers? Like a little 1 hour thing or anything like that?
Do you know anything about that, Art, or if we have social media training for volunteers?
No, I don't believe we do. I
Yeah.
don't believe we have anything for volunteers. We do have some material if they are interested in wanting to get, but so far as recommended, other than taking the Open Meetings Act and the public information, that's it. That's the only thing that is required for a person to serve on a board.
Cool.
How the Civil Service Commission members are given a copy of the Code of Ethics once they assume office, but that's not. But again, I understand what you're saying. The social media training is probably a good idea for, you know,
For all of us.
globally for everyone. Yeah. Councilmember Nunn.
I was just going to kind of follow up on that because we had been told, like maybe a couple of years ago, that there was going to be a social media policy written, but I guess there's not one, correct?
Not.
There is one. We've been kind of going back and forth with the city attorney to approve it, but we had a committee that we put together.
Okay, good.
And we started that committee probably 4 months ago. So they proposed a policy, and it's been kind of going back and forth between us and the
But it's
city
being
attorney.
worked on.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Weist.
Everybody done with questions? Can I make a motion or?
Sure, we're certainly in line for a motion.
Alrighty. Been going back and forth on how to do this, so I've been making notes. On the matter of the Haltom City Code of Ethics and Section 2-452 and 2-454 Standards of Conduct, Declaration of Article Policies. There are some signs of it, but I don't think Mr. Elliott knowingly violated them. He has been a excellent volunteer and businessman in our city. I do feel that he does need to go ahead and get the packet that has the Code of Ethics in it, because he probably lost that since he's been a member for 10 years. So he can go ahead and kind of review those again. I don't think any action needs to be taken on him tonight. I think he can go ahead and retain that civil service. I do feel that he does need to go ahead and kind of look for some social media training because he's probably like his sister and speaks his mind. I'm just going to say that, Allison. So we all speak our mind. We all make mistakes. I don't think any action needs to be taken other than give him the code of ethics again so he can review that.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Councilmember Grove.
That's for a second.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilmember Brown and none. Did y'all have questions or comments? No? Okay, so we have a motion in a second. So if you would, please signify your votes. Brent, do you mind restating your
The
motion?
motion is I do see some violations were there, but no action should be taken. He does need to give the code of ethics copy does need to be given to him again so he can review it.
You okay with that, Councilmember Ward? Okay. If you would, please signify your votes. Motion passes unanimous. I want to thank this council and Elliott and everyone else coming out tonight. That being said, we have no further business to conduct. We are adjourned at 8:05.